Let's face it, you can have a life that looks successful and still feel like you're carrying way too much. The pressure, the overthinking, the constant weight of holding it all together. This is Live Lighter. I'm Jessica Berg, and this show is for women who are done living like that. Each week, we'll be breaking down what's actually keeping you stuck in that pressure and how to start letting it go so that your life doesn't just look good, it actually feels good. All right, so hello and welcome back to the Live Lighter podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Berg, and I am so glad that you are here for this conversation. My guest today is Ashley Graham. Ashley spent years in PR helping other people tell their stories, and today she is here to tell her own. And her story includes a birth experience that nearly took her life. And the center of it is something that I work on with almost every client I come across and also within myself. And it's that quiet inner voice that tells us that something is wrong, and in a parallel path, the conditioning that so many of us have experienced and learned, which is to silence it because we don't want to be too much. And what I love about Ashley's story is that it is a story of not only the birth of her child, but it also has become the birth of her coming home to her own inner knowing and finding her voice. So Ashley, I am so honored that you are here, and I'm so excited to dive in.
Everything that we talked about in our initial connection call, the fact that you were able to put it together in that way just gives me so much confidence to be here today, but it gives me so much confidence to continue to follow that calling I was telling you about, to tell the story more, because I do feel that as an alchemist, I'm supposed to take the experiences that I'm faced with, both positive and not necessarily negative, but unpleasant, uncomfortable, and wield it into a way to not only gain deeper insight as to why I might have been called to experience certain things, but to tell it in a way to support other people and to show them that they are not alone and they have a person who understands them, can see them, and hopefully support them in navigating that journey a little bit easier moving forward.
Oh, so beautiful. It really is the essence of out of darkness comes light. Tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what's the story that you want to kind of dive into today, and then we can kind of see where we go from there.
I feel that my birth experience, and this is connected to just becoming a mother in general, like as a whole, my whole identity shifted significantly. But I feel that my birth experience birthed a whole different woman than who I was before. A new mindset, a new way of looking at life. I've never been in a position where I questioned my own mortality and thought about my own mortality more than I do now becoming a mother, but given what I went through and what I had to do to essentially get on the other side of that journey. And there was a little voice that told me that something was wrong. There was a little voice that just kept calling for my attention. And as I sat with it, I really felt like I was making it up in my head. I thought that it was just normal postpartum anxiety. It was normal postpartum aftermath of going through a traumatic and unexpected birth experience. And I can only imagine that thousands, if not millions of other women have been brought to a dozen of experiences in their life where they had their own little voice tell them that something was wrong, that they needed to be aware of what that voice was telling them, but some other narrative, a narrative that was not their own, a narrative that was from social conditioning or just other types of conditioning that we are around throughout our lifetimes. And they ignored the voice, and then the aftermath of ignoring that voice was so much more substantial than if they would have listened to the voice in the first place. I'm trying to really come to terms and create a language as to maybe how to identify that voice, make that voice the stronger, more loud voice in the head versus the social conditioning voices, I am still on that path of becoming and trying to understand that myself, but it's through channeling it and talking about it in the imperfect ways that we do find better understanding of that. And that is really where I'm at right now in this point of my life.
And that integration hallway, it's the way that I always describe this with my clients is you have the breakthrough, right? And then, or the catalyst moment that becomes the breakthrough. And then you have this path until it becomes the embodiment. And that's the integration. And that's the conscious and intentional actions, like you coming onto this podcast to break down that conditioning, to rewire and relearn, and to become more and more of an embodiment of it. So it's beautiful. And it can take 18 months is what I've experienced and been told through all of my trainings is integrate. And it can be lifelong too. It gets to be something we get to continue to prune. So I'm so proud of you for coming here today and to let us see in real life what integration gets to look like.
So, thank you so much for the space. When I had filled out the application to come on the show, again, that inner voice, it was such a dualistic experience. There was a part of me that was like really questioning, are you ready to be witnessed and to be seen in this way? But then luckily, the stronger, more empowered voice was like, you have actually been sitting with the discomfort of this for months now, and you can either continue to sit in the discomfort or you can show up and speak what you're preaching. And luckily, that is the voice I decided to follow.
I've had goosebumps the entire time you were talking. And usually that's my indicator that these are all things that we need to dive into. So I would you feel comfortable to share a little bit more about your experience and what was triggering that inner voice and what you ended up leaning into that brought you to technically where you are today?
I think just starting with some context of the catalyst, the experience that really broke the dam open for me. And it goes back to my birth experience. And just a little nugget, a gold nugget about who I am. I have been doing really deep spiritual personal development work for almost 2 decades of my life. And I thought it is lifelong, and that's good. It just shows that you have more life to live. You have more experiences, more challenges, more mistakes, and we never want that to end, right? So going into pregnancy, and especially getting pregnant with a viable, healthy pregnancy after experiencing 2 miscarriages, I was like, I have done hard things. I've got this. And I have always been a little intimidated, if not fearful, of the whole birth experience, because you do hear experiences and stories from other women where you're like, can I really go through this? Am I strong enough to go through this? Because it is something that is so unknown. And I just reminded myself that I can do this. I've done hard things. And I went into that day heading to triage that I was like, I am going to allow myself to take a step back and just allow the experience to unfold the way that it is, because this is not really up to me. I need to let my body take the front seat and be the driver. And that was easier said than done in that moment, because everything that happened after, it was just one thing after another. I had to make very quick decisions on how to protect my baby and protect myself without even really understanding what went into the situation, because I had never been there before. My birth ended up in an emergency C-section situation because of everything that was happening. And I had to make a very quick decision because my life was on the line and so was my baby's. Luckily, C-section was great. I was able to come back into the room and then really start this whole journey forward. I was very disassociated just because of everything that went into it. It was a mind, body, emotion, spiritual experience all at once, and everything was just taking its own space, and I just needed to allow myself just to process in whatever ways that I could in that moment. But nothing would have been able to prepare me for when I got back home. I was discharged from the hospital. I came home, and when I had decided to leave the hospital, they had given me an option to stay another day, but I was like, I really want to be in my own space. I want to be in my own energy. I need my bed. I am ready just to put this part of my chapter behind me and then now start this next part of it moving forward and what that's going to look like. But when I got home, I was not okay. There was this voice in my head that kept telling me, something is wrong. Something is wrong. It was like this error, red flashing light being like, this is not okay. You are not okay. You need to do something about this. But I had no language for what I was feeling. I've never been a mother before. I had never gone through birth before. I have never entered into the thresholds of postpartum before. So my rational mind talked myself into what I thought at that time was rational thinking. I talked myself into, this is all normal. This could be labeled as postpartum anxiety. I don't know what postpartum anxiety looks like. I don't know what postpartum anything looks like. I don't know what's going on in my body. My body's recalibrating at a vast level that I don't even understand. So I allowed what we were saying was the social narrative or the social constructs of telling me I don't want to go to the ER right now because I'm going to look like a postpartum mom who is just going through a lot of anxiety. I'm going to be given the label of postpartum anxiety, and then they're going to send me home. And so I was like, I don't want to put myself in a position to be witnessed in that way because I don't know how to explain what is going on with me. I was crying every hour because I was so uncomfortable. I felt like I was dying, and I never had felt that experience before.
So your body was like sending these alarm bells.
It was.
And
the perfect way to explain
your mind is coming in and trying to analyze it and then suppress it and numb it and say, no, we're fine, or this is not that big of a deal. When in actuality, this happens all the time where if we just listen to our body in the first place, because the body never lies, the mind always can play tricks on us, right?
Yes. And there were all of the signs, but my mind was just telling me, you're making this up. It's not real. You're too much. If you go to the ER, they're just going to look at you like somebody who has just entered into this new experience and just say that it's all normal. And my husband had told me, this was the night before the biggest initiation of my life. He had told me, he was like, do you want me to take you to the ER? Because he had seen the state that I was in. And I was like, I don't want to, leave the baby. That's not an easy decision to make as a new mother, leaving the baby when you're just trying to find a sense of stability in this new chapter, and let alone that baby is so dependent on you in those first crucial days, weeks, months. If my husband would have really pressed me, and if he would have allowed the voice to be the most dominant voice that I was listening to in that moment, I would have gone. But he gave me the space to make the decision for myself, and this inner war that was going on was just so loud that it was like, no, I do not want to go to the ER. That does not sound like a fun decision to make right now. And what had happened the next day, I had experienced what was my understanding a pretty rare experience. I experienced what is called a severe delayed postpartum hemorrhage, where I hemorrhaged at home in my bathroom. And I cannot tell you how much blood. My husband had to call 911 to have the paramedics show up at the house. They had to get me on a stretcher. They had to get me into the ambulance, rush me to the ER. And I had luckily wrote about this article, so I have a lot of frame of reference to follow, or else the emotion, I think, of this experience would kind of keep me from being able to talk about it. There were 10 different professionals in the ER room. working on my body all at once, like getting it to stabilize, because what they assume is that given I was a cesarean mother, an emergency cesarean mother, there might have been some remaining placental pieces or membranes that were left in the uterus, which basically allows the uterus not to contract down, and it just was basically an open cavity taking blood from the rest of my body until it just couldn't essentially hold anymore. I want to apologize for graphic details here, but there really is no other way to explain it other than to give some real insight of how that works, what was going on. And so
I feel that most of the listeners, the majority are women. And I feel that after you go through birth of any kind, there's no such thing as TMI, because you just experience a lot of the body. And so, don't hold back anything that you feel you need to censor.
I appreciate that. I just also want to kind of keep it more so framed into the impact of what this message is, not necessarily about all of the details of what happened. I just remember being in that ER room and just trying to watch and become aware of everything that was going on. And it was really difficult because my body was going through something that I didn't understand. I didn't even have the language for what was happening yet at that point. I also was incredibly weak, and I was fighting my own state of consciousness to stay lucid. I remember that there was this voice that had happened while I was waiting for the paramedics to arrive, that my body was very close to collapsing on the ground, and I had pulled every ounce of willpower that I had to be like, if you fall on that ground right now, you're not going to wake up. And that fear, that triggered me to stay lucid in a way that I've never had to channel that kind of strength before in my life. And I brought that with me into the ER room while I was just trying to pay attention of everything that was going on. And I just remember that there was this voice, because I was sure. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to make it on the other side of this. I have never had to be rushed to the ER before. I was like, there's no way I'm making it on the other side of this. Like, how can I, when you're rationalizing your body needs blood, how much came out and how much continues to come out, you're like, am I going to make it? Am I going to make it on the other side of this? And there was this voice, it was my own voice, that was, I can't even explain it. It was just this weird, very weird voice that was coming through static noise. That's the best way to explain it. And it said, this is not how you go. And I fought it. And that is why through the months of my early postpartum and just trying to feel a sense of normalcy, a new sense of identity, while also being a mom and finding a routine and finding a balance there, I really was like, what is the heart of what this experience is? And it's really trusting and listening to that voice. When you don't necessarily have the confirmation yet to trust it or the affirmation to trust it, but it's there for a reason and you should trust it. That's
beautiful. And for you to be able to retell that story in such a grounded fashion is just a testament to how much you've actually really sat with it and faced it.
Yes, there's
a lot of healing in there.
There is. And thank you for seeing that, because there's some moments where, even like I said, I was a little nervous coming here today. Luckily, we were able to kind of ground before we really started the conversation. But when you were giving an intro and really reflecting back what we had talked about the conversation was going to be today, I felt emotion really bubbling up, and I started kind of getting a little teary-eyed, and I'm like, can I do this right now? Yeah, because again, going back to that initial, I've done hard things. I have now done one of the most difficult experiences, and I've been able to get on the other side than I've ever experienced in my life. And just telling the story in a way that is empowering, but also reflective, and shows that maybe this story can help other moms or other expecting moms of what the possibility of what could happen and how to advocate them for themselves, or to take themselves to the ER and not allow that voice to win saying you're going to be too much or they're going to label you as X, Y, and Z. That is really what brought me here today, and why I'm doing this work by telling this story is because luckily I have access to close emergency medical care just given where I am geographically. But there are some new mothers who don't necessarily have the support system that I have, are not close to emergency medical care like I was. And that is really where this confidence comes from telling this story, is because I want to help mothers advocate for themselves to save their lives.
And for you, with the storyline of the too much, is that a storyline that you had been told prior to that moment?
I would say yes, but I don't recall where the root comes from. I don't know if it's societally. I don't know if there was potentially something that was said to me in those prime early development years, or maybe it was just a product of the environment, or maybe there was something that happened where I felt like I was speaking up and I was dismissed or silenced or whatever the case may be. I can think of a couple incidences that might have been where that catalyst came from, and it just really transformed and evolved with me through the years into adulthood. I don't necessarily know the main root, but I'm sure there's many.
It can be a collection of them. And it's all rooted in those early years that little Ashley learned. Yeah. And so here we are as an adult Ashley, and that little girl is still carrying that belief of, no, we can't be too much. Yep. And the fact that you were able to take that, you did what you were taught to do, which is, this is the belief I have. I'm not going to be too much because that's not going to get me love and acceptance and safety. So I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to simmer it down. I'm going to silence myself and numb it. And then on the other side of that, what you've been given is this whole entire rewiring of that belief. And you being someone who, from all your years of doing some of the inner work, it sounds like you took that experience and you looked at it and you got curious. And by doing that and letting yourself feel into it and letting yourself feel all the emotions that come up with it, the real trauma that you experienced, you got to rewire that belief, not only for Ashley as you are today, but also the little girl inside of you. That you aren't too much. And that, speak it loudly.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's really easy to understand what's going on when the activation is already done. I just remember when everything was finally calmed down in the ER room, and I was then checked in back into a labor and delivery room because they were monitoring me for a couple of days. I had to get another procedure the next morning. So unfortunately, there still was just a lot of unknowns while I was there. But of course, in typical fashion, I was just sitting there and I was like, that voice told me. That voice told me something was wrong. I knew it. I felt it. I believed it. I wouldn't have had the emotional response that I had if something was not right. I was crying every hour. I could hardly eat. I could hardly even drink water. I was incredibly nauseous. It was really hard to nourish myself, let alone I was taking care of a newborn who was only 7 days old at that point. And my survival instincts were just going on at rapid fire, and my body just continued to feel depleted. And I was like, I think I should be starting to feel at least a little better every hour, every day. And I just continued to feel even worse. And while I was back in the hospital, I was like, I should have listened. But it's so much easier to be able to look back on it in that moment and been like, if I only would have just listened to myself. But then a part of me was like, I didn't know what I know now. And
Yeah.
now I'm left with, what do I do with this? And that's just like what this in between phase and chapter of my life has really been. It's like, what do I do with this? I can't go back and I can't change the past. I wish I could, but I can only now carry the experience forward and alchemize it in a way for other people, but even for myself. I think I have really stepped into this whole new stage of my life and who I'm becoming. I'm not her yet, and I don't think I'm ever going to be her because, again, there's so much life still to experience, and that is the beauty of it.
You're her it's an essence, and you're already stepping into her and embodying her.
Yes, and I want to say that I don't think about the experience every day, but it services a lot because it is really, like I said, it was the catalyst that broke the dam open, that it's like, I don't want to be in a position where I don't trust my inner voice ever again, because when your life is on the line, that is the golden ticket. That is the one thing that it's like, this is what all of this is for. It's for my life and to continue to live. And I want to be here for my daughter, and I want to be an incredible example for her from my own lived experiences, to where she doesn't go through her life doubting that inner voice and not trusting herself. So that is, I feel, one of the biggest things that I'm now carrying forward from this experience is I have to continue to trust my voice, because I'm teaching and showing and being a role model for my daughter to trust her own.
Yeah, you're breaking the cycle.
Yes, it ends with me.
Yeah, it's powerful. That's what the healing work is. We get to break the cycle so that we're not passing down the conditioning to our children, and they get to be rooted in beliefs that serve them versus ones that hold them back. So while I didn't have a traumatic catalyst moment like you did, mine has been more of a slow, gradual learn. Yours was more like a wake up, right? Like a bolt, a lightning bolt. And for many people who haven't had that experience, it can be really slow and gradual. And I would love to hear your thoughts on, as you're integrating, right? Because now you know that you can trust your inner voice, because it literally saved your life. Yeah. It was a life or death experience. And you saw, like, even in the moments where you were quieting it, it was still so loud that when push came to shove, you were like, okay, that is something I was hearing this entire time. It was my compass. And what I have found is, with the inner voice and the inner knowing, it's almost like it comes from the body, like deep within. And when I start to when I start to go back and forth is when I can feel myself literally energetically move into my head. And that's when I know I'm not being guided by my truth. It always has to come from the neck down. And it can be something as simple as plans for friends, or a business decision, or like decisions with the kids, and anything from schooling to activities to their health, etc. There's this deep inner knowing that once we tap into it and we continue to get familiar with it, it's just such a clear yes and no. I would love to hear for you as you're integrating that and getting familiar with that inner voice and trusting it, because that's the other thing that is a part of the integration, is learning to trust it because of the years of conditioning that we've had to not listen to it. And so then we stop trusting ourselves, as in a way as well. I would love to hear from you. How are you continuing to sharpen and grow your trust and connection with it?
I had a feeling we were going to talk about this part. And
Did you?
Yes. I was thinking about this earlier. I was like, okay, what is the method? What is the method? What are the steps? What are the steps of embodiment that I have followed? Just because it does give a guide for other people to understand the signs to look for themselves, but to turn the mirror and the reflection back on myself. And then going through this whole experience, I'm like, how did I get through? How did I get on the other side? And I'm still very much in the middle of that. But for me, I am a writer. I'm a writer by nature. I'm also a speaker. And one of the things that I have really challenged myself, whether it's uncomfortable or not, is to continue to speak about it. And anytime that I felt any type of emotion resurface about the experience, I made sure that I at least had somebody that I can speak about it with. Now, the experience was very much trauma induced for my husband as it was for me, because he was here and he had to be the one to jump in and take care of the baby and take care of getting me the emergency care that I needed, because I wasn't able, obviously, to do that for myself. And so being able to talk about it with him not only helps me understand and process my own inner thoughts, past, present, and future about the experience, but I've been able to get a deeper understanding of what was happening in that moment from somebody else's lens and somebody else's perspective. And so that alone, I think, could also just lead into a perfect thing for somebody to do if they are trying to understand their own just thought patterns or their own just thought wavelengths, especially when you're in deep reflection, especially trauma, and finding the right support systems to kind of help you through that process. This is where I think therapy, or just speaking with some type of supportive role, somebody who can understand from not only just a medical perspective, but then just another form of care, you can get really deep insight into what that process is like from just being able to talk with somebody who is able to give you a different lens. And there was a good 3, if not 6 months where it was in conversation almost every single day, just because there was new insight, new information, and new language that we were giving to it, and how it was shaping and molding our life now in those very crucial moments in the start of postpartum. But going back to the writing component, I had ended up writing an article for Newsweek, and again, understanding the kind of the thought process as I was filling out an application to potentially write this article to publish, there was this voice in my head that was like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this? And then there was the other one that was like, no, I know the impact of what this is going to bring. I'm advocating for other mothers. I want to do this. It's going to be a piece of empowerment. I feel this calling. I'm going to follow it. But the fear really surfaced where I was like, what if you are perceived as somebody who is adding fear to the birth narrative, which is, there's definitely some controversial back and forths around sharing negative birth experiences or trauma birth experiences. And so that thought pattern that really surfaced was very much kind of what it was in the beginning while the incident was happening. I was like, no, I don't want to be too much. I don't want to be perceived this way. The fear was surfacing, and I was like, here you are again, and I'm not listening to you. I am following the empowerment of what this piece can really bring, and it is ultimately to serve and save other mothers. I'm going to follow it. And that took me about a month or so. Once the article was approved, I wrote the article and shared so much details, like explicit details, just to give the full picture. And I would say that entire month was very much the dualistic thought pattern experience of what I went through before the incident happened in the first place. The fear was really trying to take my attention, and I was like, that's fine. You can be here. I'm going to hold space for you, but you're not going to stop me from doing this, because I know the beauty and I know the empowerment is way stronger than the fear ever could be. And so,
can I add something really quick to what you just said?
Yeah.
So what I'm observing as what you're describing is you have the intuition. It's like the soul's voice saying, yeah, we're going to do this. We know we got this. And then you have the inner critic. It could also be mixed with your nervous system wanting to keep you safe, because you are putting yourself out there. And when you're putting yourself out there, you are being susceptible to how you're going to be perceived. You're being vulnerable to how you will be received. And for your nervous system, it tracks that as a threat. So your nervous system is triggering like, no, we're not going to do this. This is a horrible idea. What are we thinking? Here's all the reasons why you shouldn't do it. It's almost like you witnessed that happening, and instead of pushing it away and saying, get away. No, I'm not even going to listen to you. You held space for it and you honored it. And that is what I always tell my clients to do, because and I've done this too. I've done this for myself, where you get to hold them and say, thank you. I understand what you're trying to do for me. And we're going to keep going forward because we're safe to do this. And so in that, it's almost what you're doing is you're retraining and rewiring your nervous system for the capacity of what it sees as safe and unsafe. And you're doing it together, like you're holding it and holding its hand, the little Ashley who developed those beliefs and that conditioning. And you're saying, it's okay, we're going to do this and we are safe. And thank you so much for trying to protect me. You're doing your job and I love you for that. And we're going to be safe to do this. So that's what I wanted to jump in, because from my background and my own experience personally and with my clients, like that is a very real thing that we encounter, and we get to hold space for that, and we should. And it's not our stop sign. It's just our nervous system doing what it's supposed to do and keep us safe. So it's beautiful.
Yeah, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that safety. For me, luckily, maybe again didn't necessarily have the language for it in that moment, but every time I reflect back on I was really challenged with wanting to put myself in a safe cocoon because I had fought so hard to get into that place of safety. In that article that I wrote, I even told at the end of it that it was like coming back from the hospital when you literally feel like your life was almost taken from you. You don't just bounce back from that right away. And it's not necessarily that I felt even connected to my own body. It was such this out of body experience for such a long time. And luckily, through my own healing, I was able to ground myself. And one of the biggest ways that I was able to ground myself was I had to tell myself affirmations at night to even fall asleep, because I was so traumatized from the experience. I was like, I have to take matters into my own hands to help regulate myself. And so I had to tell myself affirmations every single night for a couple of months, where I was like, I am safe. My body is safe. My body is healed. I am healed. My mind is healed. My body is healed. And my soul is healed. I had to repeat that to myself over and over again. And I want to say that there was this point, I don't know exactly where in the timeline, where I finally was starting to actually believe the words that I was telling myself. And it's so beautiful, because one of the things that I even wrote in my journal, my planner, before booking our conversation today, but then also yesterday before I knew today was happening, I continued to write that affirmation. I was like, okay, I'm not necessarily writing in a sense that my body is healed, my body is safe, but I am witnessing myself and reminding myself that I am safe to be seen and visible by telling this story. And here I am again. I will probably be saying that affirmation to myself for the next 6 months in this journey while I'm in the beginning of it, because I need to rechannel that inner strength and that inner voice that I went through in the very beginning of this crucial traumatic experience. But now I need to continue to remind myself while I am doing the advocacy work around this story.
The I am safe is so powerful. And it's literally you talking to your system and reteaching it. And it's really beautiful. And you guys get to do that together. And it's not easy, but it is bit by bit. It, like even you said in doing the affirmations, I'm sure at first you're like, okay, is this even going to work? I'm just going to try it. And then over time, it starts to land in your body, and you start to see the power of just even putting words to it and giving, honestly, I don't even know it's not so much the words, but it's the intention and the energy that you're putting towards it.
Yeah.
Which is really powerful. Because at the end of the day, it's safety. That's what we're seeking is a sense of safety, and a lot of it's the safety within ourselves.
In stages, there's been ebb and flow moments where I want to say around the 6-month postpartum mark for me, I really felt the sense of safety in my body. I felt like my hormones were so much more regulated. I felt that we were in a better routine with a vastly fast growing baby, which, oh my goodness, I have so much appreciation for mothers, especially new moms, because you hold a lot. You hold a lot. There was so much happening all at once simultaneously, and I pride myself on having that inner strength and that willpower to be able to hold it all. And it wasn't easy, and I allowed myself grace to really acknowledge that if I needed to seek external support, if I really felt that I was not able to hold it all together anymore, then I had a plan B. And luckily, just by having an incredible partner, but then also having the space at home to not need to rush back into a life that I was not necessarily ready for by having a 9-to-5 job. That's the joys of being self-employed for so many years. I was able to really heal in my own way, in the way that I needed to. And I think that's why I was able to find such fast healing given everything that had happened. But there's some moms who don't have the support in that way, and maybe their healing's a little bit more on the slower end. It's taking a long time to even be able to reflect on the trauma, reflect on everything that the world is asking from them in that moment. And this is, again, why I don't know necessarily what my next chapter of this looks like outside of just telling my story. But I really am calling in the clarity of being like, how can I create something to support mothers who necessarily don't have the support system to hold it all? And what does that support look like from here? And that's just like where I've really been sitting with what's next.
Yeah, and what's next for you? There's so much from what you have built and gained from this experience is this development of trust with your own inner voice, and that self-trust trickles into everything you do. It just ripples into the decisions you're making as a mother, the decisions you're making with your business, with the people you love. You just end up having this like true, authentic north within your own system. And that is so incredible for a woman to step into when we've been conditioned. And I think everyone's conditioned to kind of quiet the inner voice to a degree, but especially women. And then for you to, as a result of that too, is to amplify your voice, amplify your story, and allowing your story. This is something that I've experienced too when it comes to amplifying that voice and the voice activation, which I've been working on myself, is as long as my story and what the voice that I am amplifying, it comes from a place of true intention for me, I have zero control over how it's going to land for someone else. And it's not my responsibility to have the control over how that person's going to interpret it, because that person has their own life experiences, their own wounds, their own things that they need to look at too. So my ask would be to just keep amplifying it and don't hold yourself back, because you have a beautiful story, and it's all rooted in women coming back to the innate power within themselves, the trust and self-love and cycle breaking, so that we're not passing down these beliefs that were holding us back down to our children. It's so powerful.
It's very deep work. And going back, man, pregnant me, so aloof. I had no idea. I had no idea what was on the other side of the birth experience. I knew birth was the reality. That was what I was waiting for. But then you have ideas and maybe conceptions about who you're going to be. You obviously know that your life is going to change significantly. Routine, identity, hormonally, your body is going to change. And holding space for all that is like one of the best ways that you can honor that before it happens. But if I go back and I think about who I really was going to be like at the core of the identity work. I had no idea. And if I would have had the perfect birth experience that I was really calling in and manifesting, I don't know if necessarily what I'm working on right now would even be where it's at. I'm sure it would be beautiful. I'm sure it would be amazing. It would be empowering just because I wield things into existence based off of how I want to support other people. I am an advocate by nature, just by heart and my soul. But everything has been able to come together. It's like all of these pieces of the puzzle came together in a way that I don't think I would have ever been able to really put it together if it was not for what happened. And yeah, I am going to reflect on this a lot because I set a goal for myself, but I set a goal for myself to at least pitch 3 speaking opportunities this month. And that inner critic and that fear is like, who are you to be pitching yourself for X opportunity in this? Because I'm like, what accolades do I have? Do I have the accolades to pitch myself for this? I have had accolades. I've had X, Y, and Z before, but is it really at this level? The inner critic still to this day, in so many ways, even challenges me in all of the little things. But it's people like you who are able to witness, keep going. And I'm like, okay, I have 2 forms already open on my tabs that have been there for 3 months, if not longer. And maybe today is the day that I fill it out and hit send.
Today's the day. Today is absolutely. I love that. What would hold you back?
Really, I don't know. But if we really want to dive deep into like the inner workings of my inner critic, one of the biggest things that comes up for me, and maybe this is just the PR brain that I've been like operating in for so long, but I'm like, what is my positioning? What is the positioning that's really going to diversify what I'm bringing to this experience, what I'm bringing to this story, and how is it going to serve other people? And I really get stuck in that part of it, that it's like, what coaching or what guidance can I really give other people? Because I don't have the blueprint. I'm still very much in the middle part of it, the messy middle part of it. So what real benefit or impact do I bring from telling this story in a way that it really could shift the needle forward when it comes to systemic change of women honoring their inner voice and silencing their own inner critic or the social conditioning? I don't have an understanding of what that looks like just yet. And so when we're talking about speaker forms, it's like, what are you bringing to the audience? And I am like,
your experience.
What am I bringing to the audience here?
Well, so here's my take as a human being on the other side of it. Credentials can be powerful, but at the end of the day, it's people are wanting to listen to you. It's you. It's not whether you have certain degrees following your name. It's your lived experience, and no one can take that from you. People want the real, authentic, messy, because that's where you're already ahead of where they are. A lot of people. So the people who you're touching are the ones who are at that starting line, and they're looking at you being like, okay, she's not at the end, she's in the middle, and that's my next phase. And she's sitting here sharing with me what that looks like. So that doesn't feel as scary to me because she's showing me in real time what that looks like. So it's a beautiful place to be. People are, especially in the world of AI, people are so hungry for just real human messiness because it's real and it's authentic.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think a good anchor to this is just show that I talked about this a lot when I was doing podcast coaching of guesting to be on the podcast that you want to be on. And chances are you are the one that is holding yourself back more than we think we are. And I was constantly telling clients that it's like, why not shoot for your dream publications? Why not shoot for your dream podcast? You have an incredible story, but it's always harder. Not harder, let's scratch that language. It's more challenging to reflect that back to yourself than it is for the people that you're supporting, because you're working with them for a reason. You see their brilliance, you see their wisdom, and you know the work that you bring to the table to make those dreams happen. It's always hard to turn it back on yourself. And I've really been sitting with this, that it's okay, let's put on the PR crown and being like, okay, how can I now support myself to make this big vision happen? And I've just been taking the steps slowly. The Newsweek article was one of the first steps that I was like, okay, if you're really wanting to follow this work, this is what you can do right now in this moment. And that brought me over the threshold that it was like, okay, now I'm doing it, but now I'm constantly creating new anchors to achieve and overcome. And the public speaking part is just very much like, I feel it. I would not be following this work if it was not coming to me. I'm not sitting here premeditating on it. This is like a calling, and I'm trying to follow that calling, but I am still very much an imperfect human being myself who has a very some days.
We all are imperfect. That's called being human.
Yes, it is.
And how we get to show how okay it is to be imperfect, and how beautiful it gets to be imperfect, and how safe it gets to be imperfect. And we're all freaking learning. Every single one of us are learning along this journey. And there is not one, how boring would it be if we weren't in a learning phase? If we weren't growing, if we were just at the top and we're like, this is so boring. Oh, no, we're all learning, and no one has it all figured out.
So
Yeah. So be messy. Get messy in the middle and let it shine.
I will. And one of the things, going back to the writing component, I had initially started a newsletter called The Postpartum Voice, which I now have transformed into being my own column on my personal blog, simplyashleygraham.com. And I've been interviewing subject matter experts to talk about just parts of the postpartum journey, whether it's trauma informed or just part of the recalibration that comes in postpartum. And the more and more that I'm having these conversations, like in community with other people, it just really shows that I'm like creating a space while I'm in the middle of it, which also has given me the confidence to keep the conversations going and to continue to put myself even deeper into the people who are also doing that work as well. And I think, again, it's very much in the middle stages because it's new, and I'm just really still sitting with my own experience and other parts of postpartum outside of the birth trauma. And I know that there is going to become a day where everything really does click. Like I said, all these little pieces are starting to come together to form this puzzle. And I'm starting to see the vision more and more, which is really exciting. But I'm also just in a space where I don't want to rush it, and I don't feel like I need to rush it, because I feel that postpartum, just talking about postpartum specifically, and the human experience, it doesn't end, because it's not like you go back and you're never not a mother anymore. Like, your identity is now changed for the rest of your time here on this planet and beyond. And it's like, okay, how can you now continue to take the experiences and watching a child grow in front of your eyes, and you're changing while they're growing and adapting and learning, and it never ends. And so I know that this work, I never really felt that I had my soul work figured out or had an image of what that looked like until now.
Yeah. And you probably don't even know all the specific pieces, but you don't have to. It just gets to be, you end up getting to a place where you look back, and to your point where you were saying at the time it didn't make sense, but now I see why I had to go through that experience. And with that realization, you get to have this sense of trust and surrender to what's to come, because you know what's meant for you is going to be coming, and there is a reason for all of it, and you don't have to have it all figured out right out of the gate. That's the fun part of it.
Yeah, it makes it exciting. And what I'm just doing right now is just taking all the glimmers that I'm getting along the way. And one of those, the biggest glimmer right now, is being in connection with you. And like I said, I was filling out your intake form, and I was like, are you ready for this? And then once we had our connection call, I was like, okay, this is why I'm glad that the soul's voice was so much stronger to hit submit, because I'm like, I really felt that this was the space I needed to be in to really practice telling the story in a way that was going to bring me more glimmers and get me even more steps forward into that soul calling. And the way that you've just been able to witness me since we got on our first call together, it's like, okay, now I just need to continue to allow that conscious voice in me be the louder one than the inner critic or the fear. But I'm like, just, can you leave me alone for one day?
It's been such an honor to get to be a space for you, a safe space for you to amplify your voice, your story, to inspire other women who are either experiencing something similar or experiencing some type of thread where they have this inner critic that they haven't listened to, and they're looking to gain more of a relationship with that and to amplify their voice and know that their voice matters, that they are not too much, that they are, the world needs them to take up space and to trust themselves more and to really let their voice be heard.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you so much for coming on here.
Thank you. And the space that you're creating here with the Live Lighter podcast, like, it's also doing like such deep soul work for other people to be able to reflect on other people's stories and take the nuggets of insight that they get for their own life. Yes. So my blog, simplyashleygraham.com, it's actually my personal brand thought leadership site and my blog all in one platform. I also launched the Postpartum Voice. As I said, that started off as a newsletter, and I wanted to have it under my personal brand just because it's way more expansive that way. And you can really understand kind of the connection between the previous identity into the identity now and learn from incredible subject matter experts who really are in support of postpartum moms. And as far as social media, you can connect with me on YouTube. I'm launching a YouTube channel to talk a little bit more about the motherhood narrative, especially around identity and just the lifestyle ways of how and why I'm honoring my voice in this way, especially new forms of creation. And that's under Simply Ashley Graham as well. But you could also connect with me on LinkedIn and through my podcast, the Conscious Publicist Podcast.
Amazing. All of the links to everything that Ashley just listed will be below in the show notes. And Ashley, thank you so much for just being here, sharing your space, being real, being raw, and inspiring so many women who are listening to this.
Thank you.
Have an amazing day. And until next time, be well. All right, so that's today's podcast. Thank you for listening. If you would like to learn more about the services that I provide to women, you can check out my website at jessbergcoaching.com. That's JESSBERGCOACHING.com. Until next time, be well.